See, that's very kind. I hope the next 20 minutes will provoke a few questions and a little controversy. I hope. And I'm really, this is great. I'm looking forward to the session. So here goes. For those late on in Australia, or for the very hardy insomniacs in America, if anyone is still listening, that probably wouldn't be good. Where I want to start is here, with Homer Simpson, an X-ray of, coupled with Daniel Kahneman. So look, I mean, probably everyone listening, and I know my fellow panelists, we are now pretty familiar with the language of System 1, System 2, behavioral, science, and Daniel Kahneman. So I'll do it quickly, but it's absolutely, I think, fundamental to the way that marketing and market research is going to go, in the next sort of 10 years. And it is, I think, pretty exciting time. And I know there's big data and there are some other kind of contenders for, excitement, wearables, etc., which is great. But central to it is an understanding of how the human brain really works, and how people really make decisions. And I guess if I was going to try and simplify it, and apologies if it's almost on the brink of being too simplistic, but I think it's necessary. It's like, my sense is that the current model of marketing, which we've been practicing for years, and it was certainly what I was taught when I joined Unilever, management trainee scheme many moons ago, 1986, quite a while, is that the whole thing is predicated on the idea of the left brain, right brain model of how people's brains work and how decisions get made. And roughly speaking, marketing is 50% rational, 50% emotional. The best metaphor for the current model of marketing I've ever heard is that it's a fist of a brand proposition, the USP, wrapped in a velvet glove of emotion. So the velvet glove, the emotion in our advertising or in our product concepts is there to lure people in so that we can hit them with why our brand is superior to the competition's brand and persuade people to buy. At its heart, it is a persuasion-based model of marketing. Okay, so far so good. And it seems very plausible and it seems sensible. It's just not actually accurate enough. It's not the way the brain seems to work, and what Daniel Kahneman and the other kind of behavioral scientists, are saying is there's a better model of how the brain works, and it's not left brain, right brain, but it's fast and slow, 1 and 2, System 1, System 2. And it's System 1 because that was the original human brain. It basically, the System 1, the instinctive, intuitive, emotional brain, has been around a hell of a lot longer than System 2. Of the million years of Homo sapiens, it's probably about, 900,000 years it was around before the System 2 cognitive, analytical kind of, the clever bit. I mean, it's incredibly clever and brilliant. And that's probably what brought language. I mean, language has only really been around about 100,000 years. And the idea of this System 1, System 2, this emotional, instinctive, intuitive part versus this heavy, analytical, cognitive, kind of thinky part, changes the way that we need to understand decision-making. Because if you split 1 and 2 into computing power, System 2, the clever, thinky bit, would be 50 bits of computing power, whereas System 1 is 11 million. So, as I sort of put on the screen, we think much less than we think we think. And we basically emote and we make decisions emotionally and instinctively much, much more than perhaps we would care to admit. This changes our understanding of how communication works, how advertising works, because I'm afraid it is not as rational as the current models and the current ways of testing and the current ways of approaching it is. A quick demonstration of System 1, if I may. So on the screen, when it comes up, can you just say out loud the brand on the screen? We'll go back to this one. Okay, first one. You probably need a bit of that if you're in Europe. Next one. and then the third one. Probably a little early for this one. So brand recognition, which is hopefully what these three brands, Starbucks, Coke, and Absolute Vodka have shared, demonstrated. Brand recognition is what's important because that's system one. It's pattern recognition. It's a symbol, it's a sound, it's a visual, versus brand recall, which is a kind of classic market research and advertising research type question. It's recognition trumps recall. Okay, we've been measuring the wrong things. Now, in terms of system one brand building, yeah, what it really is about, what system one marketing, I think, in market research is about, is almost the logic of intuition. There is sense in it, there is some predictability, but it's basically what's underneath the surface rather than what's on the top. And if you want probably the best formula I've come across for marketing, if you like, is if you feel nothing, you do nothing. What you have to do is generate emotion. You have to actually get people to feel something. Even negative emotions, by the way, are more commercially valuable to you than no emotion. So something that is sensible but frankly bland, that doesn't offend anybody, and no doubt if you did qualitative what you've got to do is get people to feel something and kick up a commotion, if you like. And for anyone who's read Byron Sharp's fantastic book, How Brands Grow, you will know that the formula for brand success, okay, is brand share equals fame times availability. Now, availability is not just physical, but is mental availability. And the only brief you should really ever give your ad agency is make my brand famous. Penetration is what grows brands, not loyalty. And the way that you generate penetration is you create fame, you generate emotion, and you basically make the brand the easy choice. The reason that fame and availability is so critical and central to famous brands is you're effectively allowing people to make a decision purely system one, make it easily, make it without regret, and make it the sort of social choice. For example, talking of fame, we open in a futuristic city with an air of malevolence. Column after column of zombie-like men march in grey prison clothes to an auditorium. They sit compliantly, hypnotized by a bespectacled Stalin-esque character who on shorts and vest, runs through the same corridor carrying a large throwing hammer, pursued by police in full riot gear. The woman sprints into the hall, past row after row of drones, and slides to a stop in front of the massive screen at the front. She swivels on her heels, round, and hurls the hammer into the center of the screen. As it hits, the whole screen explodes, and in unison the drones open their mouths and groan in pain as their dictator disappears and a script appears on the screen. On January the 24th, Apple will introduce the Macintosh, and you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984. That advert, 60 seconds, that introduced the Macintosh, ran once. It ran at the Super Bowl, pretty much pre-internet, so there was no kind of the virality was all word of mouth. And it made Macintosh and Apple famous. It's probably one of the most famous adverts in American history. That is the sort of advert that I'm talking about. More recent examples of ads hopefully will appear on the screen. So, the Cadbury Gorilla, much talked about, in advertising circles, would be another classic example. The three moonwalking pony, which we were involved in helping make, P&G Thank You Mums, and the Guinness wheelchair basketball, which we were also involved with. These are the sort of ads that in our kind of ratings are 5-star ads. And these are the sort of ads that are just famous. And they, if you think about it, they have very little, if any, rational message. They make you feel something. You know, the P&G advert, I think, is, you know, for me, in a way, it's almost the most sort of compelling example, because P&G is so associated, you know, with kind of product demo and rational advertising. But this chart came from P&G. Okay, so what they are, even they are aware that the very best of the current model of marketing, yeah, gives you 3-star adverts. Fist of a proposition wrapped in a velvet glove. And at best, you put in 100, you get back 115 to 120. If you can be brave enough to do a purely emotional ad, a 5-star ad, then you take the lid off the ROI, and it's 160, 180 and above. Yeah? And when P&G did their Thank You Mums ad, I mean, it broke all the rules of P&G advertising. And as a brand, I mean, as an advert, it was a 5-star ad, but as a brand, in their brand tracking, they went from a 3-star brand to a 4-star brand, and basically increased sales by about 400 million, and I think their share price is now about $90. So real commercial effect. Because that's the thing. I think too often we associate creativity in advertising with, you know, winning awards, and somehow we think it's not about selling shampoo. It is about selling shampoo. The IPA have shown definitively that those 5-star emotional ads have the most massive commercial effect, far bigger than the fist of a proposition wrapped in a velvet glove. So how do you measure emotion? How do you measure System 1, I think, is the central challenge of market research today. You know, and there are lots of techniques emerging, which is fantastic. This is the way we do it with Face Trace, which I think has now been used over 3 million times, you know, around the world. And it's which of these 7 emotions best captures how you feel about this ad. Paul Ekman, the guy on the left, is the, you know, originator of this this theory. So you say, you know, let's say happiness, it's Cadbury Gorilla, and then it's what type of happiness, and then to what degree do you feel happy and why. The why is a post-rationalization, so you need to be careful, but it's still a great way to capture how people feel, and how people feel is the best predictor of what they do. Far, far better than asking people purchase intention, which really, really does not predict what happens, especially in advertising. Here's a quick example. So Tropicana did 2 adverts. A very famous one, you should probably remember, Breakfast in New York, which was all about cooking eggs and bacon, and the orange juice was just part of that. And then another pretty good ad, Fruit to the City, where people plucked fruit from trees as they went, you know, on their journey kind of into the city. And actually, when you show these 2 adverts to classic, you know, marketeers and say, which one would you choose, nearly always at the beginning of the session they choose Fruit to the City because it's got more about the product. It's got a bit more about Tropicana. And what you'll see on this chart is on the right-hand side, sure enough, Fruit to the City does better on those classic advertising measures like relevance, persuasion, how much it told you about the brand, and you would indeed choose Fruit to the City as the better ad. On the left-hand side, you've got how people feel about it, where you can see that Breakfast in New York has the edge over Fruit to the City. And sure enough, in ROI terms, both of them were good, but Breakfast in New York was £1.83 for every pound, and Fruit to the City was £1.73. So Breakfast in New York is indeed the, you know, the better ad, and it has less message, but it has more emotion. All right, so coming towards the end, what I wanted to do is to share a little bit of when you start to try and make an advert like this, a 5-star ad. This was Orlando Hooper Greenhill, Global Planning Director at JWT. And we were working with them on the Lemonade, the HSBC Lemonade campaign, and this is what he had to say afterwards. This way of thinking about advertising, it's exciting and inspiring. But what I want you to know is that if you want to create a 5-star ad, you are looking at a radically different style of advertising. And by the way, that includes how you make it. Yeah, so the Lemonade campaign, that we did with HSBC, and the Guinness wheelchair basketball, the John Lewis Penguin, the latest Penguin ads, or the 3 Mobile, all of which, we are central and been involved with. Here are a few of the radical things, no qualitative research. Shock horror. I will be in big trouble because my lovely wife Charlotte is a qualitative researcher and very good at it, by the way. But I don't actually think it's that helpful. Measuring how people feel on a script or an animatic and actually understanding how they're feeling, if you like, second by second, and as long as you've got the diagnostics to tell why, is a better way to know whether you're on to something that could be 5-star or whether it's a 1-star turkey and frankly start again. The second is that you're working with universal human truths rather than USPs, unique selling propositions. It's UHT, not USP. Because famous ads take universal human truths and attach the brand to it in a brilliantly creative way. And the third, controversial point is that the execution is the big idea. This whole obsession with the big idea, you go from insight to big idea, and it's as if the brilliant execution just pops out magically. No. I'm afraid I don't think there's any famous ad I've ever seen or been involved with or heard about that was made in that way. The execution is the big idea. By all means, reverse engineer what you think is the summary of it afterwards, but don't believe that it is the way to get it. All right, now, just to finish up, we've got a few Lemonade. This was the HSBC. It's been fabulously successful for them. Now, Werther's, this is just to share the power of music. Okay, so this was the same advert we did for Werther's with 3 different pieces of music. One was a 3-star, one was a 4, and one actually was powerful enough to make it a 5-star ad. Because music is pure emotion, it basically can have that much difference on the commercial impact of your advert. In the UK, those listening in will be aware of the adverts on the screen here, because these are the UK Christmas ads, which is starting to become in the UK a bit like the Super Bowl is in America. This sort of moment in the year where all of the brands, or relevant brands, fall over themselves to do something purely emotional. So in this year, all of these have been tested. We have our client, I'm glad to say, John Lewis with the charming penguin. They are back to their best. At the other end of the spectrum, I'm afraid Halfords, despite the fact that it's about kids and Christmas opening a bicycle, is a bit of a 1-star turkey. It just doesn't actually connect. It's not very emotional. And the Sainsbury's ad, which is really interesting, is a 2-star advert for Sainsbury's, but a 5-star advert for the British Legion. So it tells the story, the famous story in World War I of the Germans and the British laying down their arms and playing a game of football on Christmas Day. And it is a really beautiful advert, and it is brilliant for the British Legion. But it doesn't quite fit in people's minds with Sainsbury's. So not bad, but that I think is perhaps a lesson for us all. Okay, quick summary, just to finish. Here are, if you like, just a few. I mean, these are probably the main differences when you apply behavioral science to advertising. Make my brand famous is basically the objective, rather than the classic awareness, interest, desire, action. That model, I'm afraid, that lovely linear model, is just not the way anything works. Emotion, not cognition. Seduction, not persuasion. Universal human truths over unique selling propositions. Execution is what you should focus on, not the big idea.